Everyone's chasing automation, but here's the catch. If the system you're automating isn't actually working, then you're just making the wrong thing happen faster. And that's what we're seeing all over marketing right now. Automation feels efficient, but it's often just elegant chaos. I'm Justin L. Brown.
And I'm Ryan Edwards.
And today we're talking about the automation trap and how to spot fake efficiencies and build workflows that will actually help your team breathe. All right, so let's get into it. Right now, we've seen people build out these automations thinking that they're actually building efficiencies. They have, their Slack messages going off every 6 seconds. They have a Zapier account with some workflow that kind of saves them a few seconds of time. But in actuality, their automation isn't as efficient as it probably needs to be. So my question to you is, why does automation feel productive even though nothing is actually getting done?
Because like you said, I can, give me minutes and I can set up a Zapier account. I can create a Zap that goes from an email flag to my CRM program to, Chat GPT to edit something. And I get these little nice notifications at each point of it. I'm like, cool, I'm doing something. I'm getting 3, 4, 5 notifications. But the outcome, the end result isn't there, but I feel good. I feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just proved my worth. I go to my boss, hey, look at this. Look at all these little notifications I have here. Look at all these things that I did. And they're like, oh, that's great. Because we've been trained for the last 15 years in the workforce to value those little notifications, to value those micro steps, and not to really pay attention to the outcome.
I know when I get, you sign up for email, for an example, and you get so many different emails coming in from Golf Now to Taco Bell's new promotion to this thing that's happening, and all of a sudden you're starting to get numb to those notifications. So I can totally see how that type of validation doesn't actually help in the long run. My next question for you is when do you know that automation's gone too far?
I mean, your automation's gone too far when you're getting more and more stuff done, but you're not moving the ultimate KPI. You're not moving the ultimate goal, which is revenue. I mean, we've all fallen into the trap. I've fallen into the trap where I'm just like, dang, I'm sending out so many emails. Or wow, I'm crunching so many reports. But guess what? These reports are not turning into revenue. That's when you know. And that's why it's so important when you're using automations, when you're talking about using AI, to always make sure that you have your micro KPIs, all these dings from Zapier, all these small things, but you'll also have your major outcome, whether it be revenue or if your team, whatever your North Star KPI is. If that metric's not moving, then I don't care how automated you are, you're not doing nothing.
It's basically that people are automating to try to get more of a frictionless job, but friction is actually good because friction is structure. So people, I'm not even gonna say people, I know for myself, when I have a workflow that I'm using, those friction points I know are the most important points to make sure that workflow gets done properly.
Right. I mean, it's like driving through a parking lot. If there were no speed bumps, we could drive through the parking lot at 60 miles an hour, cover the entire parking lot, and get out of the parking lot really quickly. But guess what? The speed bumps slow us down, force us to look around, force us to be aware, and force us to make better decisions. We can get out of the parking lot at 60 miles an hour without speed bumps. But at the end of the day, we're all going to wreck our cars.
Yeah, your parking lot analogy is actually perfect because not only does those speed bumps help you manage your speed as is necessary, but it actually makes sure that you're focusing on the right thing, which is probably finding a parking spot. So that makes a lot of sense. My next question kind of goes into Duct-Tape tech stacks, and how in these analogies that you've been talking about, the overall goal gets missed because you're duct taping these solutions in, but it's actually just kind of holding up the chaos that's already been there. My question for you is, what do you think is happening there, and how long did it take for everything to slow down instead of actually speed up for you?
Yeah, and let's give this a real world example, and I think a simple example everybody will understand. Let's look at SEO. So,
What does SEO mean?
search engine optimization.
Thank you.
It's when you take all those keywords and make people try to last people to find you in places like Google and ChatGPT. Here's the problem. A lot of people are selling optimizations right now. They're like, hey, we can go in there and we can crunch 2,000, 3,000 keywords, get search volumes, behavioral insights, and we can output 1,000 articles. All in automation and all the time it would take you to do three ones before. But guess what? A lot of times those 3 ones you did by hand before perform better than the 1,000. That's just because that's automation for the sake of automation. And that's the mindset of it's better to be busy in output as opposed to it's better to drive towards outcome. Now, in that example, the perfect scenario is somewhere in the middle. Let's automate it, but like as you said, let's create those friction points so it's not as automated as it can be. The reason why is it allows me to do that paired perspective and allows us to integrate ourselves into the process and get a better workflow and get a better outcome. Because remember, automation is not the goal. The outcome is the goal. Automation is just a means to the ends.
That's a great point. So this brings to my next question. As you were saying, where you build these automations, and it sounds like the biggest point of failure is not knowing when to put the human in the loop. So my question to you is, what is an example of a common automation that actually looks slick, but actually creates more work on the back end? Like, what is that? What is the wrong version of not using the human in the loop?
I mean, the classic example of that is now becoming more and more, and I think we referenced it before, is when you have a whole bunch of people in a meeting. And then you have 3 or 4 note takers. The note takers take the notes. The note takers compile the notes. The note takers take action items. And then you just copy and paste them into a quick email, or the note taker sends them to everybody in the group via automation in the email. Then people get those. They might look at them. Their AI summarizes them, and it follows the automation, puts things in calendars, and sends those off. And before you know it, you have a whole bunch of action items, but nobody really knows what they're doing, and nobody really knows if those action items are right. Or in that SEO example we just did, huge problem that's wasting tons of money and costing companies to actually go out of business is the fact that if you don't know what you're doing before you start automating, and if you aren't able to get the outcome you want before you automate, automation's not going to give you the outcome. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't know how to do it right now, but if I automate it, it looks good, and that'll give me the outcome I want. It's not. Automation's just going to help you get to the outcome faster.
Absolutely. And whatever that outcome is already inevitably going to be. So automation is basically that turbo button for whatever direction you were already going in.
Yep.
For me, whenever I do a job, this podcast is like we have to find the steps that we need to take to get this podcast out. And the first episode is finding all of those steps. And then after the next one, we can find ways to add in a few automations. There are still a lot of humans in the loop to make sure that the process is getting done properly. But as we move forward, slowly we're able to, to me, the key word is slowly put in automation where we feel extremely confident on the process.
Yeah, the Navy SEALs have a phrase for that.
Oh, yeah?
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That the best way to go fast is to go slow at first, and then figure out how to turn that into smooth, how to make that work nicely. Then you can replicate it, automate it, and go fast.
That's why the Navy SEALs are the Navy SEALs. But yeah, it makes actually perfect sense on everything outside of AI, outside of any process. When you slow down and make sure that things are right and things are done smoothly, then you can start to ramp things up. So this brings to my next question. Let's talk about what happens when teams hit the gas without auditing the system underneath. We talked about auditing last episode. That slowest smooth process usually has an audit after the slow and smooth process, so that before you ramp up to making things a little faster. So, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a question that we all can answer ourselves, but I'd love to know your take on what it looks like when teams hit the gas and think that it's time to automate, but they didn't actually audit any process that was done beforehand.
Have you ever seen the last scene in the movie Thelma and Louise?
No. I mean, probably, but like maybe with my great grandmother and back in the day.
They're like at the Grand Canyon or someplace.
Okay.
And they know they have a whole bunch of stuff behind them, and they just close their eyes, put their foot in the gas, and drive right off the Grand Canyon.
That's the ending to Thelma and Louise?
That's the ending of Thelma and Louise. And that's the ending to if you put your foot in the gas for automation without putting the checks and balances in first, without putting a human in the loop.
That actually helps me to make sure that I don't end up like Thelma and Louise. That is incredible.
Here's another real world example.
Okay.
Because we work in marketing, we've been working with AI for 7 to 8 years now. And we've been working a lot with it for this thing called DCO, Dynamic Creative Optimization. Now it's called generative AI. And is basically, put in your variables, put in your prompts, put in some stuff, and let the system create the images, create the taglines, and optimize it for the audience. I've done a check on it every quarter to 6 months for the last 8 years. I've run a program. I run a program where we checked it, where you see the exact same thing no matter what AI is at. You just turn that on, and the first week, it goes up. The second week, it goes really high up. The third week, it plateaus. The fourth week, it bottoms out. It's done that for 8 years whenever you run a generative AI ad-based program.
Got it.
And the reason why is simple. At some point, without having you in there and correcting it, it optimizes itself. The optimization loop becomes so narrow that the number of outputs and the outcomes become so limited, it becomes hyper relevant for a very small set of people. But the larger set of people who you're talking to, either in marketing or on the production side, gets lost and it becomes irrelevant to everyone else.
What does it look like when automation actually gives teams space to breathe and not just move faster? In that analogy that you just said, it sounds like there was a point in that loop that people should have checked in.
Well, in that loop, the optimal ideal is as for week 1 and week 2, as you're going up, you shouldn't just be letting it go on its own and just say, hey, it's automated. It's going to take care of itself. At that point, you should be checking in, but you don't need to check in at the granular level like you used to have to. You used to have to spend all your time checking in to fine-tune the small details. You can now let AI do that. Now your check-in is at the broader scope. Hey, how is that laddering up to the broader, in this example for marketing, how is that laddering up to the broader campaign? Are we getting a learning on the creatives from this campaign that can be given to the production team for something else, for the next campaign? It allows you to stop and pause and think on the broader scale. It allows you to be more creative and more strategic. So automation isn't there to get your work done faster, automation is there to allow you to work more creatively, more strategically, and to take that pause to think.
So for our ideology drop, we have 4 questions that you should ask yourself every time you go into an automation. First question is it saving time or just shifting it? Second question, is clarity going up or down? Third question, are decisions happening faster or just relayed faster? And the fourth question is the team more focused or just more active? So starting with the first question, is this saving time or just shifting it?
And that's a really good point, because your automation can make you feel like, oh, I am getting 10 hours of work done in 1 minute now, or while I'm asleep. And saving time or shifting it, is that time freeing you up to either have more time outside of work or to do better work? Or is that time, I often see that time is actually creating you more work, and that's creating you more busy work, because your automation, you take it and now you have to double check it, triple check it, redo it, start from the scratch when you think it's done. And so all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, my automation was great. I have something due at 5 o'clock today. You check your automation at 4, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, this isn't what I wanted or expected. And now I have 4 to 5 to do 5 hours of work in 1 hour. That's not automation. That's just time shifting your stress.
Yeah. And it always goes back to, did you actually check the system before you wired things up? So now checking the system, the second question you should be asking yourself is the clarity going up or down?
And this is the most important one. And we have a client that we do reports for every month, and we highly automate the reports. And there actually came a point when a lot of new automation tools came out, a lot of new reporting tools came out, and we dove deep and heavy into them. And it took us around an extra 40 or 50 hours over the course of a month to figure it out, because what we saw was exactly that. We were getting all of our KPIs, but our clarity as to why it was going down was lessening. We had less intelligence. We had less insights, but better reports. So that 40 and 50 hours went into creating a new way to optimize for that client and for that project. So now, yes, we spent 40 or 50 extra hours in a month to figure it out, but now every month we get 30 hours of work done in maybe 5 hours, but we've expanded our clarity. Now, we could optimize that to get 30 hours of work done in 5 minutes, but we would lose all that clarity, and that's what the client is paying us for, is the clarity, is the insights, so they can drive their outcomes.
That's right. The clarity for your client, the clarity for anyone using automation. If the clarity drops even a little bit, you really want to go back to the system and make sure that it's actually wired properly, because eventually, if it's a little bit unclear on the first round, it's going to be more unclear on the second one, so on and so forth. Which brings me to my next question. Are decisions happening faster or just getting relayed faster?
Yes. That's my answer. Yes. Yes. It's becoming an epidemic that, you have decisions. This is what we should do. Why? Because our automation workflow told us we should do it. Why? Because our automation workflow told us we should do it. Mm-hmm. That is becoming an epidemic, and we can get answers really fast. But this feeds into the last question about clarity. It's the why those decisions. And that's what your boss, that's what your clients, that's what your buyers and consumers want. They want you to understand the why behind the decisions. They just don't want you to have a faster decision.
Nothing to do with AI, but this made me think of actually why I try not to take a cart when I play golf and I actually walk, because I get that space in between shots to either soak in the idea that I just hit a fantastic shot, or soak in the idea that I did not hit a great shot. But that walk up gives me perspective on what that next shot could be. So by the time I actually get there, I probably have a better idea of what my next move should be.
And that's why the last time I played golf, which was, 30 years ago, I used a golf cart only because I played golf cart polo.
Oh.
I drove the golf cart the whole time.
And everybody was fine with that.
Oh, no. I got yelled at left and right.
And this brings us back to why automating doesn't help. You just proved the point right there.
And I think I had, for the course that day, I think I had a course record of like 80 above par.
Oh, wow. So you were holding people up too.
I was holding people up. I was causing problems. Hey, after the first few holes, I learned don't drive the golf cart on the green, even though it was a lot of fun.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. This brings to our last question, which is the team more focused or just more active? And clearly, when it comes to you at golf, it's just more active. But back to AI, how can teams be more focused as opposed to just more active? You gave some great examples before, but what does it look like for a team to do that?
This is where it comes into the team leaders, the managers, the directors, the leadership. Because the age of AI working requires a different style of managers. Now you have automation. And like we said before, the goal of automation isn't to get things done faster, it's to allow people to elevate the way that they work, to be more strategic, to be more creative, to think more, to collaborate more. And it's the goal of the manager at this place, or it's the goal of, if you're a solopreneur of yourself, I guess, but you have to plan better that time that's being created for you. Because if you don't plan that time and plan how to have those strategic, broader questions, that bigger thinking to do, then, as you said earlier, all that you're doing is you're creating free time to waste free time.
So basically, and we talked about this, and what we're finding out, even with this podcast, we're talking about systems. We're talking about things, whether you're implementing AI or not implementing AI, it is really about taking the time to understand your process, understand your system. And then once you fully understand it, then that's when you start to make suggestions to your team or find people to give you suggestions on how that system could be automated. But it comes down to understanding your SOP, auditing the SOP, then you get to automate after you've done those two steps.
And I'm going to call an audible on this one really quickly.
Okay.
You want to talk about automation and process? Our lovely Frances over here, who's off camera, already in real time using her own little SOP and automation solution, has already taken notes from what we've talked about.
No way.
Pulled them out, run it through AI, and has talking points and notes for us before we're even done.
This is incredible. So we just need to start doing this live. Sure. Oh, yeah. All right. Let's do it.
She's gonna be putting instructions on how she's doing that quick SOP below in the YouTube comment area on how she does her SOP for pulling those notes out before we were even done.
That's incredible. Thank you, Francis, producer extraordinaire.
Voice of God.
All right. So this week we want to ask our audience to pick one of the automated flows that you have in your stack and ask is it still serving you or is it just running on autopilot? If you have 10 different systems, duct tape together in Zapier or just duct tape together with vibes, then this might be the time to rethink that whole machine.
And here's how you rethink the whole machine. And as we talked about, and here's where you start. Here's where we would start. It's all about outcomes, goals, KPIs, automations. You have to work backwards in that step. And that's how we work with you. You start with the outcome. What is the outcome you want? Increased revenue, increased productivity, increased leads, whatever it is. Then you have the goals. How do we measure that we're moving to the outcome? Because that's the key. We set up the measurements, because without measurement, you don't know if your automation is doing anything. Then the KPIs for that measurement. Then you can go in and break apart exactly what you're doing to get it and see what step aligns to what KPI, so we can see, are we automating to reach your outcome and your goals, or are we automating just to make us look busy?
What does KPI mean?
Key performance indicator.
Great.
So you have a hierarchy. You have the outcomes, like an outcome is really broad. Increase revenue, increase leads, increase time to ship. Then you have your goal. Here's like the 2 or 3 things that we need to nail in that. Like to increase revenue, fine. Our goal is we have to have a ROAS of this much. Or to ship faster, fine. That means that we have to be able to ship in these 2-3 week sprints, and we have to achieve these certain things in these sprints. Then behind the goals, you have your KPIs. And the KPIs are usually at your team level or at the individual level. Well, in order to ship in 3 weeks, in order to achieve our goal of solving 5 bugs in 3 weeks, we have these KPIs. These KPIs might be error request fixes for product development. Those KPIs might be volume for marketing, stuff like that. Those are the nuanced.
What if I know that this needs to be done, but who can help me make that happen?
Cameo 5.
Really? Tell me about Cameo 5.
Oh, I see what you did. Cameo 5 is consultancy. And we have a mixture in our consultancy between a deep background in marketing as well as a deep background in operations, and operations across the board. And so what that has taught us to do is to go in and understand not just what needs to be done to fulfill a job, but how that job ladders up into the greater outcomes and the goals. And so we'll come in and we'll look at it almost backwards. We'll look at it from what are your outcomes and your goals to make sure those are well defined. And that gives us the roadmap then to work with you, audit your process, and understand how your process can be automated, where your process shouldn't be automated, and where you're simply missing steps in your process. And so now we have the roadmap to go from the starting point to those outcomes. And that makes everything work together. That makes everything work in concert.
Which is really why we started doing this podcast, because you can understand the latest and greatest in AI, or you can understand workflows. But when it comes to the actual ideology that goes around implementing AI, it is so helpful to have a team like your team at Cameo 5 to come in and guide you through that process.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing about AI. At the end of the day, AI is a new tool, but the process isn't new. The process of understanding your outcomes, your goals, and your KPIs, that has been the process since the 1940s. So, like I said, what gives us a great perspective at Cameo 5 is we come in from the aspect of half of us are operations, half of us are marketing. We've created the processes for both, and we bring it together into multiple facets of your company.
So next time on Process of Elimination, we're going to be talking about AI agents are coming to your workflow. Here's how to get ready, because agents aren't just tools, they're teammates. And your system better be ready for the shift that's about to happen.
See, now I have this mental vision in my head of Paul Revere riding through Concord, yelling out, "The agents are coming, the agents are coming."
Next time. Thank you.